Why emotionally intelligent people never explain themselves. The quiet power of self-validation and authentic living. Preface. The quiet strength you've overlooked. There is a particular kind of person who walks into a room and does not announce their arrival. They do not list their accomplishments, justify their choices, or defend their preferences. If they decline an invitation, they simply say, "I can't make it," without a 5-minute monologue about why. If someone misunderstands them, they might smile and let the misunderstanding stand. They do not rush to clarify, correct, or convince. At first glance, they might seem aloof, even arrogant. But spend enough time with them, and you realize something else entirely. They are deeply secure, profoundly at peace, and remarkably emotionally intelligent. This book is about those people. More importantly, it is about the trait that defines their interactions. They never explain themselves. Not out of stubbornness, but out of a profound understanding of what truly serves connection, self-respect, and emotional well-being. They have cracked a code that the rest of us spend decades scrambling to decipher, that constant justification is a cage, not a key. And that the most powerful communication often contains no explanation at all. I wrote this book because I was once the opposite of that person. I was a chronic over-explainer. If I said no to a friend's request, I'd follow up with a paragraph about my schedule, my exhaustion, my guilt, and a promise to make it up to them. If someone challenged my opinion, I'd launch into a 10-minute defense, citing sources, personal experiences, and logical fallacies. If I made a mistake at work, I'd write an email so long and self-flagellating that my boss probably deleted it after the first sentence. I believed that if I just explained well enough, people would understand, approve, and love me. Instead, I found myself exhausted, resentful, and perpetually misunderstood. The turning point came when I observed a colleague, a woman named Sasha, handle a difficult situation. She was asked to take on a project that was clearly outside her scope and capacity. She looked the requester in the eye, said, "That doesn't work for me right now," and returned to her coffee. No excuses, no explanations. The requester blinked, nodded, and walked away. I was stunned. I would have agreed and then spent weeks complaining, or I would have crafted an elaborate excuse. Sasha simply declined, and her relationship with that person remained intact. Her boundaries were respected. Her stress level was unchanged. I approached her later and asked how she did it. She shrugged and said, "I don't owe him my reasons." No is a complete sentence. That phrase, "no is a complete sentence," became a seed. But this book is about far more than saying no. It is about the entire architecture of emotional intelligence that makes unapologetic authenticity possible. It's about why the most emotionally intelligent people have learned to stop explaining, and how you can too. This is not a book about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about becoming so solid in your own being that you no longer need to prop yourself up with words. It's about learning that the right people will understand you without exhaustive explanations, and that trying to make the wrong people understand is a waste of your life force. It's about discovering that silence can be an act of love, both for yourself and for others. Emotional intelligence, as defined by psychologists Peter Salovey and John Mayer, is the ability to perceive, understand, manage, and regulate emotions in oneself and others. Daniel Goleman later popularized the term, adding components like empathy, motivation, and social skills. At its core, emotional intelligence is a kind of literacy, the ability to read the emotional landscape and respond wisely. Over-explaining, we will see, is often a symptom of emotional illiteracy, an inability to tolerate discomfort, a misreading of social cues, a desperate attempt to control perceptions. The emotionally intelligent have transcended this. They know that their emotional state is their responsibility, and that they are not required to manage yours by over-explaining their every move. This book will guide you through the psychology of over-explanation, the mindset shift required to stop, the boundary-setting skills you need, and the communication techniques that replace defensiveness with quiet confidence. We'll explore relationships, leadership, and the deeper philosophy of authenticity. By the end, you'll understand not just why emotionally intelligent people never explain themselves, but how you can join their ranks and experience the profound relief that comes with it. This is an invitation to a quieter, more powerful way of being. Let's begin. Part 1. The Anatomy of Over-Explanation. Chapter 1. The Urge to Explain, a Universal Human Condition. To understand why emotionally intelligent people don't explain themselves, we must first understand why the rest of us do. The impulse to explain is nearly universal. Observe a toddler who has just spilled their juice. Before any reprimand, they launch into a stream of garbled justification. I was trying to get the cup and it slipped and I didn't mean to and the table was wet. They are not yet fully verbal, but they already feel the need to defend their actions. This drive is deeply ingrained. It is born from our fundamental need for belonging and safety. Human beings are social creatures. For millennia, survival depended on being part of a group. Exclusion from the tribe was effectively a death sentence. Our brains evolved to be exquisitely sensitive to signs of rejection, disapproval, or misunderstanding. When we act in a way that might be questioned, a primitive alarm goes off. Clarify now, or risk exile. Explanation becomes a tool to repair any perceived rupture in social bonds. We explain to reassure the group that we are still one of them, still cooperative, still safe. This drive is amplified by our capacity for theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have thoughts, beliefs, and perspectives different from our own. We realize that our internal intentions are invisible to others, so we try to make them visible through language. I didn't mean to hurt you, we say. Let me explain why I made that choice. In doing so, we hope to align our inner world with the outer perception. It's a beautiful and necessary aspect of human connection, in moderation. The problem arises when this urge becomes compulsive, when we explain not to connect but to protect, not to share but to defend. For many, the urge to explain is less about clarity and more about anxiety. It becomes a ritual to neutralize the discomfort of being seen imperfectly. We imagine that if we just find the right words, the discomfort will vanish. So we keep talking, hoping to talk our way into safety. Consider the simple act of being a few minutes late to a meeting. The over-explainer enters flustered, already launching into a saga about traffic, parking, a phone call, an alarm that didn't go off. The emotionally intelligent person enters quietly, nods an apology, and takes a seat. Why the difference? The over-explainer's anxiety is so high that they perceive lateness as a catastrophic threat to their social standing. They must repair it immediately with a flood of context. The emotionally intelligent person recognizes that everyone is occasionally late, that an elaborate story often draws more attention to the lateness, and that a simple, calm acknowledgement is more respectful of everyone's time. They trust that their inherent value isn't at stake over a few minutes. The urge to explain also stems from a misunderstanding of responsibility. We often feel responsible for other people's emotional reactions. If we decline an invitation and the host is disappointed, we feel that we have caused that disappointment and must fix it by convincing them that our reason is valid. But we haven't caused it. Their expectation caused their disappointment. Our job is not to manage their expectations by offering a palatable excuse. Our job is to be honest and kind. The emotionally intelligent person understands this boundary. They do not take on the impossible burden of controlling how others feel. In the chapters ahead, we'll dissect the psychological mechanisms that drive over-explanation, from insecurity to people-pleasing. But first, let yourself recognize the ubiquity of this urge. Notice how often you feel the impulse to justify a simple preference, a boundary, or a mistake. Notice the tightening in your chest, the mental rehearsals, the relief when you finally get the explanation out. That relief is the hook. It teaches your brain that explaining equals safety. But it is a false safety, built on the shifting sands of others' opinions. Emotionally intelligent people have found a deeper safety, one that resides within. Chapter 2. The psychology behind over-explaining, insecurity, guilt, and the need for approval. If over-explanation is the symptom, what is the disease? The roots run deep, often into childhood experiences, personality structures, and learned coping mechanisms. At its core, over-explaining is a strategy to regulate self-worth by controlling external perception. When our internal sense of value is shaky, we look to others to stabilize it. Explanation becomes the currency we use to purchase approval. Insecurity is the most obvious culprit. People who are insecure about their decisions, their competence, or their likability feel a constant need to prove themselves. Every choice must be justified because they fear being judged as incompetent or wrong. A friend who chooses to stay home on a Friday night might explain to everyone, "I'm just so tired because work has been crazy, and I have this project due, and also I think I'm fighting off a cold." They are not simply stating their choice. They are mounting a defense against the imagined accusation of being boring, antisocial, or lazy. The irony is that the very act of over-explaining often signals insecurity more loudly than the choice itself. Guilt is another powerful driver. Some people have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility for others' feelings, leading to excessive guilt over any action that might disappoint. This guilt demands penance, and the penance is often a detailed explanation. By laying out their reasons, they hope to be absolved. "I'm so sorry I can't make it to your party. I feel terrible. I really wanted to come, but my mother-in-law is visiting, and we haven't seen her in months, and she'd be so hurt if I left." The explanation serves as a confession of a perceived sin. Emotionally intelligent people have learned to differentiate between healthy empathy and excessive guilt. They can care about someone's disappointment without feeling guilty for having legitimate needs. They offer a warm, "I'm sorry I'll miss it," and leave it there, trusting the other person to manage their own feelings. Need for approval ties these together. Many of us were raised in environments where approval was conditional on behavior. Love and acceptance had to be earned by being good, which often meant compliant, selfless, and always able to justify any deviation from expectations. As adults, we continue this pattern, seeking approval from bosses, partners, friends, and even strangers. We explain ourselves to demonstrate that we are still good, still worthy. The emotionally intelligent person has internalized a source of approval. They approve of themselves. This doesn't mean they don't care what others think, but their self-worth doesn't hinge on it. They can act in alignment with their values and accept that some will approve and some won't. Perfectionism also plays a role. Perfectionists strive to be above reproach, so they preempt criticism with exhaustive explanations. They leave no stone unturned in their justification, hoping to leave no room for judgment. Yet perfectionism is a trap, because no explanation is ever bulletproof. There is always another why. The perfectionist ends up in a spiral of elaboration, never feeling truly safe. Anxiety, particularly social anxiety, fuels the fire. The anxious brain is constantly scanning for threats, and the potential negative judgment of others is a major threat. Over-explaining becomes a compulsive behavior to reduce the anxiety spike. It's a form of mental compulsion. If I just clarify this one more thing, the anxiety will go away. It rarely does. The emotionally intelligent person has learned to sit with the discomfort of not being perfectly understood, to recognize the anxiety as a passing state rather than a command to speak. Finally, there is the phenomenon of trauma-induced over-explaining. Individuals who grew up in environments where they were frequently criticized, gaslit, or not believed may develop a habit of meticulous justification. They had to prove their reality to survive. As adults, they continue to offer evidence for their feelings, choices, and perceptions, even when no one is asking. For these individuals, stopping the explanation can feel like a loss of control or a dangerous act of vulnerability. Part of the healing journey is learning that today's relationships can be safe without that level of defense. Understanding these psychological roots is the first step to pulling them out. When you feel the urge to explain rising, you can ask yourself, is this insecurity, guilt, a need for approval, perfectionism, or an old protective habit? Naming the driver weakens its grip. You can then choose a different response, one rooted not in fear, but in quiet confidence. Chapter 3. The Social Conditioning, How We're Taught to Justify Our Existence. We are not born over-explainers, we are made. Social conditioning shapes us from the earliest moments, teaching us that we must account for ourselves to be acceptable. This conditioning varies by culture, gender, and family dynamics, but its message is consistent. Your choices are up for public review, and you must provide satisfactory evidence for them. Gender conditioning plays a significant role. Women, in particular, are often socialized to be agreeable, nurturing, and accommodating. Saying no without a good reason is seen as selfish or unfeminine. From girlhood, many women learn that a simple, "I don't want to," is insufficient. They must have a palatable excuse, a headache, a prior commitment, a family obligation. Boys are also conditioned, though differently. They may be taught that they must explain their failures to maintain a facade of competence and strength, while successes can be claimed without explanation. This double standard creates a culture where many women over-explain their boundaries and many men over-explain their shortcomings. Emotionally intelligent people, regardless of gender, recognize these scripts and consciously choose to step out of them. They understand that authenticity is not bound by gendered expectations. Cultural conditioning adds another layer. In collectivist cultures, where group harmony is prioritized, explaining oneself may be seen as a duty to the group, a way of showing that one's actions consider the collective. In individualist cultures, explanation might center on personal logic and rights. Both can tip into over-explanation when the individual feels they must constantly align their actions with external standards. Some families operate like mini-collectives, where any deviation from the norm must be justified to the family council. Children who grew up in such families often become adults who over-explain their life choices, still seeking the family's approval long after leaving home. Educational systems reinforce the need for justification. We are graded on how well we explain our reasoning in essays, lab reports, and debates. The skill of articulation is valued, which is good, but it often bleeds into a belief that any decision not accompanied by a logical argument is invalid. We learn to believe that emotions are not valid reasons, so we intellectualize our feelings into explanations. If we feel like skipping a social event, we can't just say, "I'm feeling drained," we must fabricate a logical reason. This training severs us from our intuitive selves. Emotional intelligence, in contrast, revalidates emotion as a legitimate guide. The emotionally intelligent person can say, "I'm not up for it tonight," with no further justification, because they know that their emotional state is a valid reason in itself. Workplace conditioning is a powerful reinforcer. In many jobs, you must justify your time, your budget, your decisions, and even your mistakes with meticulous explanations. This is functional and necessary for accountability. The problem is when this habit bleeds into personal life, where accountability to others is often voluntary. The emotionally intelligent person can compartmentalize. They provide thorough explanations where required by their role, but they do not feel compelled to justify their personal life to colleagues or friends as if they were a supervisor. Social media has intensified the perceived need to explain. Our lives are displayed, and every post, photo, or absence is subject to comment. Many people feel they must explain why they haven't posted, why they've changed their appearance, why they hold a certain opinion. The culture of the hot take and the thread encourages constant public justification. This environment trains us to feel that silence is suspicious, that a lack of explanation is a lack of accountability. Emotionally intelligent people often curtail their social media use or engage with it on their own terms, refusing to feed the beast of constant justification. They know that their life is not a public hearing. Family dynamics are perhaps the deepest conditioning. Children who were frequently asked, "Why did you do that?" in an accusatory tone learn to preempt accusations with explanations. Children who had to manage a parent's emotions learned to explain as a form of caretaking. Children whose boundaries were consistently ignored learned that only a strong enough justification would protect them. These patterns become the subconscious template for adult relationships. We recreate these dynamics, surrounding ourselves with people who demand explanations, because that feels familiar. Breaking free requires not only changing our own behavior but also reassessing the people we allow close. Recognizing these social scripts is liberating. You begin to see that the demand to explain is often not a genuine need for information but a social power play. When someone asks, "Why don't you want to go?" they may be genuinely curious, or they may be pressuring you to give a reason they can dismantle. The emotionally intelligent person can discern the difference and respond accordingly, either with openness or with a kind but firm boundary. They have stepped off the witness stand. Chapter 4. The Cost of Constant Justification, Emotional Drain, Erosion of Self-Worth. Over-explanation is not a harmless quirk. It extracts a heavy toll on mental health, relationships, and self-esteem. The costs are cumulative, often unnoticed until the damage is severe. Emotional drain is the most immediate consequence. Every explanation requires cognitive and emotional energy. The chronic over-explainer is in a near-constant state of mental rehearsal, crafting scripts for potential conversations, rehashing past interactions to see if they said too much or too little. This is exhausting. It leaves little bandwidth for creativity, spontaneity, or genuine connection. Many over-explainers report feeling burned out from social interactions, needing excessive alone time to recover from the performance of justification. The paradox is that they use that alone time to craft more explanations. It's a treadmill with no off switch. Erosion of self-worth follows. When you constantly justify yourself, you are implicitly sending a message to your psyche: my choices are not valid until others approve them. Over time, this erodes your internal sense of authority. You begin to doubt your own preferences unless you can argue for them convincingly. A simple desire like, "I want to spend Saturday alone," gets buried under layers of justification until you're not sure if it's a legitimate need or a selfish whim. Your self-trust crumbles. You look to others to tell you if your feelings are okay. Emotional intelligence is the opposite. It's trusting your emotional reality and using it as a compass, not a defendant's testimony. Relationship dysfunction is another cost. Paradoxically, over-explaining damages the very connections it seeks to protect. When you offer a long-winded excuse, you often provoke more questions and scrutiny. It can appear manipulative, as if you're trying to control the other person's perception through a flood of details. It can also burden the other person with emotional labor. They now feel they must respond to your explanation, reassure you, or manage your guilt. Healthy relationships thrive on honesty and simplicity. A simple, "I can't," is often more respectful than a dramatic saga that makes the other person feel guilty for asking. Furthermore, over-explaining can create an imbalance. You become the perpetual apologizer, the one who is always in the wrong, and that dynamic attracts people who like having the upper hand. Loss of authenticity is a deep, existential cost. When you craft explanations to satisfy others, you gradually lose touch with what you actually think and feel. You become a persona designed for public consumption. The distance between your inner self and your outer expression widens, leading to a sense of hollowness, of not being known. You may achieve approval, but it's approval for a curated version of you, not the real you. This disconnection is a root cause of depression and anxiety for many. The emotionally intelligent person prioritizes inner congruence. They would rather be disliked for who they are than loved for who they are not, and that means dropping the endless performance of justification. Missed opportunities arise because over-explanation eats time and mental space. How many hours have you lost crafting the perfect text message to decline an invitation, time that could have been spent on a hobby or with loved ones? How many decisions did you avoid making because the thought of explaining them was too overwhelming? How many times did you say yes to something you didn't want because it was easier than explaining a no? The cumulative effect is a life that is smaller, more constrained, and less aligned with your true desires. Conflict escalation is another hidden cost. Over-explaining in a conflict often adds fuel. When you defend your position at length, you invite the other person to critique your logic, prolonging the argument. A simple statement of feeling or boundary can de-escalate. "I'm not okay with that. I see it differently, and I'm not going to argue about it." Emotionally intelligent people know that not every disagreement needs a resolution, and certainly not through exhaustive debate. They protect their peace by choosing not to engage in justification battles. The pathologizing of normal human behavior is a cultural cost. When we collectively demand explanations for everyday choices, we pathologize normal autonomy. A woman who doesn't want children is pressed for reasons. A man who quits a high-paying job to pursue art must defend his sanity. A person who declines a drink at a party is asked, "Why, are you pregnant or an alcoholic?" This constant inquisition forces people into boxes, stifling diversity and individuality. By refusing to explain, emotionally intelligent people push back against this cultural pathology. They model the radical notion that a person's choices are their own, and curiosity does not entitle one to an answer. To be clear, there is a place for explanation in human interaction. Sharing the why behind your actions can build intimacy, foster understanding, and coordinate efforts. The distinction is one of compulsion versus choice. The emotionally intelligent person can explain when it serves a purpose, but they are never compelled to. They have broken the addiction to justification and, in doing so, reclaimed vast reserves of energy and peace. Part 2. The Emotionally Intelligent Mindset. Chapter 5. The Foundation, Emotional Self-Awareness. Before you can stop explaining yourself, you must know yourself. Emotional self-awareness is the bedrock of emotional intelligence and the prerequisite for authentic, unapologetic living. It is the ability to recognize and understand your own emotions as they arise, to name them accurately, and to discern their sources. Without this skill, your need to explain is often a desperate attempt to figure out what you feel by talking it through with others. You're not just explaining to them, you're explaining to yourself, seeking external validation because your internal signal is weak. Developing emotional self-awareness is a practice of turning inward with curiosity and without judgment. It means asking, "What am I feeling right now?" multiple times a day. The answer is often not a simple, "sad," or "happy." but a complex blend. I feel a tightness in my chest, which might be anxiety, mixed with a heaviness that feels like disappointment, and underneath that, a tinge of guilt. The more granular your emotional vocabulary, the more precisely you can understand yourself. This precision is empowering. When you know exactly what you feel and why, the urge to explain it to others diminishes because you already have clarity. You no longer need to process out loud. Self-awareness also involves recognizing your emotional triggers, the situations, people, or topics that reliably provoke strong emotional reactions. If you know that criticism from authority figures sends you into a spiral of defensiveness, you can prepare for that. When the trigger fires, you can recognize, there's my trigger, and choose a response rather than reactively launching into a defensive explanation. This meta-awareness, the ability to observe your emotions without being consumed by them, is a hallmark of the emotionally intelligent. Understanding the difference between primary and secondary emotions is crucial. Primary emotions are the immediate, often vulnerable feelings: hurt, fear, sadness. Secondary emotions are reactions to those primary feelings, often more defensive: anger, resentment, blame. Over-explanation often arises from secondary emotions. You feel hurt that a friend criticized you, but instead of acknowledging the hurt, you feel angry and launch into a detailed defense. The explanation serves to mask the vulnerability. By developing the awareness to reach the primary emotion, you can address the real need, perhaps to express hurt calmly, or to simply acknowledge it to yourself and let it pass. You no longer need the smoke screen of justification. Body awareness is an essential part of emotional self-awareness. Emotions are physiological events. Anxiety might show up as a racing heart or sweaty palms. Anger is a hot flush. Sadness is a heaviness in the limbs. Before you have the conscious thought, "I need to explain myself," your body has already signaled discomfort. Learning to notice these bodily signals gives you an early warning system. When you feel that flutter of anxiety at being asked a question, you can breathe into it and pause before your mouth opens. That pause is the space where emotional intelligence lives. Self-awareness also extends to knowing your values, the principles that are most important to you. When you have a clear values system, decision-making becomes simpler, and the need to explain decreases. If one of your core values is health, then declining a late-night outing because it interferes with your sleep schedule is in alignment with your values, not a rejection of your friends. You don't need to explain because your choice is self-validated. Spend time articulating your values in various domains: relationships, work, health, personal growth, community. Write them down. When you act in alignment with them, you can rest in that alignment, regardless of others' opinions. Journaling is a powerful tool for building self-awareness. By writing down your thoughts and feelings without censorship, you become your own listener. Over time, you'll notice patterns. Whenever I spend time with this person, I feel the need to justify my choices. Why? Journaling helps you process emotions internally, reducing the need to process them externally. It's like having a conversation with yourself that leaves you feeling understood and clear. Many over-explainers find that a consistent journaling practice dramatically reduces their urge to overshare with others. The journey to emotional self-awareness is ongoing. There is always more to discover about the landscape of your inner world. But even a modest increase in self-awareness yields immediate benefits. You'll catch yourself mid-explanation and realize, I'm explaining because I'm feeling insecure, not because this person needs to know. And in that moment, you have the power to stop, smile, and say, actually, that's all I have to say about that. Chapter 6. Self-regulation, mastering the inner storm. Emotional self-awareness is the flashlight, self-regulation is the steering wheel. Once you recognize that an urge to explain is driven by anxiety, guilt, or insecurity, you need the capacity to regulate that emotion so it doesn't dictate your behavior. Self-regulation is not suppression. It's the ability to experience an emotion without being compelled to act on it. It's the difference between feeling the anxiety and still choosing silence, feeling the guilt and still holding your boundary. The first step in self-regulation is learning to expand your window of tolerance for discomfort. Over-explanation is often an immediate reaction to the discomfort of a pause, a questioning look, or a direct challenge. The discomfort feels intolerable, so you rush to fill the silence with words to make it go away. By gradually training yourself to sit with discomfort, you expand your capacity. Start small. The next time you're in a conversation and there's a lull, don't fill it. Notice the urge to speak and just let it be. Feel the discomfort in your body. Breathe. The silence will pass, and you'll discover that nothing catastrophic happens. Over time, you can apply this to more charged situations. When someone questions your decision, pause for 3 full breaths before responding. That pause gives your prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, time to catch up with your amygdala's alarm. Breathing techniques are a practical tool for self-regulation. When the fight or flight response activates, your breathing becomes shallow. By consciously taking slow, deep breaths, you signal to your nervous system that it's safe. A simple technique is box breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Practice this regularly in calm moments so it becomes accessible when you need it. When you feel the urge to explain mounting, take 1 box breath. It can be done subtly, without anyone noticing. That small reset can give you the clarity to choose a brief, unapologetic response. Cognitive reframing is another powerful regulation strategy. The urge to explain is often driven by catastrophic thoughts. If I don't explain, they'll think I'm rude, they'll hate me, I'll be alone. These thoughts are cognitive distortions. Reframing involves challenging them with more balanced perspectives. If they think I'm rude for having a boundary, that's their interpretation. People who truly care about me will respect my no. I will survive their disappointment. You don't have to eliminate the anxiety, but you can talk back to it. Over time, the balanced thoughts become more automatic. Labeling the emotion is a well-researched technique for reducing its intensity. fMRI studies show that putting feelings into words, called affect labeling, diminishes the response of the amygdala. When you notice the urge to explain, you can mentally say, "This is anxiety," or "This is the need for approval." That simple act of labeling shifts processing from the emotional center to the more analytical prefrontal cortex, dampening the urgency. You might even say it out loud in a lighthearted way if appropriate. "I notice I'm feeling the urge to over-explain right now, so I'll just leave it at that." This honest acknowledgement can diffuse the tension for both you and your listener. Physical movement can help regulate intense emotions. If you feel overwhelmed by the need to justify after a triggering interaction, go for a walk, do some stretching, or engage in any rhythmic physical activity. The bilateral stimulation helps process the emotion and brings your nervous system back to baseline. You can then decide, from a calmer state, whether any explanation is truly needed. Often, it won't be. Developing a self-soothing repertoire is essential. What activities or sensory experiences calm you down? It might be listening to a particular song, feeling a textured object, smelling a calming scent, or visualizing a peaceful place. Build a toolbox of these soothers and use them preemptively before entering situations where you know you'll be tempted to over-explain. Arrive already grounded, and the temptation will be weaker. Ultimately, self-regulation is about building trust with yourself. You learn that you can feel uncomfortable and still be okay. You can disappoint someone and still be safe. You can leave something misunderstood and still be whole. Each time you resist the compulsion to explain and survive the emotional aftermath, you build self-efficacy. The inner storm passes, and you remain standing. This is the quiet heroism of emotional intelligence. Chapter 7. Internal Locus of Control. You are the author of your life. Psychologist Julian Rotter introduced the concept of locus of control, referring to the degree to which people believe they have control over the outcomes of events in their lives. An internal locus of control is the belief that your actions, decisions, and efforts largely determine your life path. An external locus of control is the belief that outside forces, luck, fate, other people, are primarily responsible. Emotionally intelligent people tend to have a strong internal locus of control, and this profoundly affects their relationship with explanation. When you have an internal locus of control, you take responsibility for your choices and their consequences. You don't feel the need to blame circumstances or other people when things go wrong. This means that when you make a decision, you own it fully. You don't need to justify it by pointing to external factors because you recognize that you are the ultimate source of the decision. A simple, "I chose to do this," replaces, "I had to because of X, Y, Z." This ownership is powerful and eliminates the defensive posture of explanation. Over-explainers often operate from an external locus of control. They feel at the mercy of others' opinions, bosses' demands, society's expectations. Their explanations are attempts to manage these external forces. "I have to say no because my schedule is controlled by my boss, my family, my health, They present themselves as passive victims of circumstance, which may seem like a good excuse but actually reinforces a sense of powerlessness. The emotionally intelligent person with an internal locus says, "I'm choosing to say no because I'm prioritizing my time." They are the agent, not the victim. Developing an internal locus of control is a mindset shift. It begins with language. Pay attention to how you phrase things. Replace "I have to" with "I choose to" or "I will." Even when external constraints are real, you always have a choice in how you respond. Instead of "I can't come because I have to work," try "I'm choosing to prioritize work tonight, so I won't be there." This phrasing acknowledges your agency. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but it's authentic. And it requires no elaborate justification, because you've stated a clear, self-authored reason. Another key aspect is learning to differentiate between what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control how others perceive you, whether they approve or whether they understand. You can control your actions, your words, and your internal response. Over-explanation is an attempt to control the uncontrollable, to force someone to see things your way. Emotionally intelligent people focus their energy on what they can control, their own integrity. They let go of the rest. This is not passive resignation, it's strategic energy management. Taking radical responsibility for your emotions is part of this. Instead of saying, "You made me feel guilty," you can say, "I feel guilty when you say that, and I'm responsible for handling that guilt." This prevents the blame justification cycle. If you own your feeling, you don't need the other person to absolve you. You can process it on your own. This reduces the impulse to explain as a way of offloading emotional responsibility. An internal locus of control also fosters resilience. When you believe your actions matter, you're more likely to learn from mistakes rather than defend them. If a project fails, the over-explainer might create a detailed account of all the external obstacles to prove it wasn't their fault. The emotionally intelligent person says, "Here's where I went wrong, and here's what I'll do differently." They might explain for the purpose of learning and collaboration, but not to shift blame. This is a mature, non-defensive stance that builds trust and respect. Cultivating this mindset involves celebrating your agency. Each day, note the choices you made, big and small, and acknowledge that you were the one who made them. Even on a day full of external demands, you chose how to respond. This practice builds the muscle of internal control. Over time, you'll feel less buffeted by the world and more grounded in your own authority. And from that grounded place, the need to explain yourself fades, because you are no longer a leaf in the wind, but a tree with deep roots. Chapter 8. Radical Acceptance. Letting go of the need to be understood. One of the deepest sources of over-explanation is the longing to be understood. It's a fundamental human desire. We want others to see our intentions, appreciate our reasoning, and affirm our perspective. When they don't, we feel a profound sense of disconnection and injustice. This drives us to explain more, to bridge the gap, to finally make them get it. But the painful truth is that complete understanding from others is rare, and sometimes impossible. Radical acceptance of this fact is a cornerstone of the emotionally intelligent person's peace. Radical acceptance, a concept from dialectical behavior therapy, means fully accepting reality as it is, without judgment or resistance. It doesn't mean you like it or approve of it, it means you stop fighting the fact of it. In the context of communication, radical acceptance means accepting that some people will misunderstand you, some will project their own issues onto you, some will never get it, and that is okay. Your need to be understood does not obligate the universe to provide understanding. You can let go of the exhausting campaign. The emotionally intelligent person differentiates between the desire to be understood, which is healthy, and the need to be understood, which is a dependency. They are open to being understood when it happens naturally, but they do not hinge their emotional stability on it. They know that their own understanding of themselves is sufficient. This self-validation is a superpower. When you are your own primary witness, the failure of others to grasp your reality is disappointing but not devastating. You can say to yourself, "I know why I did what I did. I know my heart." That's enough. Letting go of the need to be understood involves grieving the fantasy of perfect connection. Many of us carry a childhood longing for a parent who completely understood us, and we project that onto adult relationships. We seek the one person who will get us without any effort. When we don't find that, or when even our closest loved ones fail, we feel an urgent need to explain to bridge the gap. But part of maturity is accepting that even the most intimate relationships involve two separate minds. Misunderstanding is inevitable. The goal is not to eliminate it but to navigate it with grace. Sometimes the most loving thing is to let a misunderstanding stand, knowing that the relationship is bigger than any single point of alignment. Practical ways to cultivate radical acceptance include mindfulness and cognitive reframing. When someone misunderstands you, notice the urge to explain. Then, mentally say, they have their perspective, and I have mine. Both are shaped by a lifetime of experience. It's okay that they don't see it my way. Allow the discomfort to be there without acting on it. Visualize the misunderstanding as a small cloud passing through the sky of your relationship, temporary and not the whole sky. Another practice is the self-compassion break, developed by Kristen Neff. When you feel the sting of being misunderstood, place a hand on your heart and say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. It's hard to feel misunderstood. May I be kind to myself. May I remember that I am still worthy, even when others don't understand. This self-soothing reduces the desperation to seek validation externally. Radical acceptance also applies to the past. Many over-explainers are haunted by past interactions where they feel they were unfairly judged. They replay the conversations, crafting the perfect explanation they wish they'd given. This is a form of torment. Radical acceptance says, that conversation happened the way it happened. I can't change it, I release it. This doesn't mean you condone any unfairness, but you stop fighting reality. You stop trying to win the argument in your head. The mental energy freed up is substantial. Finally, radical acceptance extends to the fact that some people will use your silence against you. If you stop explaining, some will accuse you of being evasive, cold, or guilty. Accept this. You cannot control their narrative. You can only live your integrity. The emotionally intelligent person understands that their reputation is not in their hands, but in the minds of others, and those minds are beyond their jurisdiction. This acceptance is not weakness, it's a profound strength. It's the strength to stand alone, if necessary, in the quiet certainty of your own truth. Part 3. Boundaries and the Art of Not Explaining. Chapter 9. The Invisible Shield. What are boundaries really? Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls that keep people out. In reality, healthy boundaries are more like gates. You control when they open, to whom, and under what conditions. They are the limits you set to protect your emotional, physical, and mental well-being. For the emotionally intelligent person, boundaries are the primary tool that eliminates the need to explain, because boundaries themselves do the explaining. A well-set boundary communicates everything necessary without a single justificatory word. The core principle of a boundary is that it defines what you will and will not accept, do, or engage in. It's not about controlling others, it's about controlling your own participation. I will not discuss my personal finances, is a boundary. I will not tolerate yelling in a conversation, is a boundary. I am not available after 8 p.m., is a boundary. Notice that these statements do not explain why. They simply state the limit. The why is your business. You might share it as a gift in an intimate relationship, but you are never required to. Many people over-explain because they confuse boundaries with walls and fear that setting a boundary without explanation will seem hostile. They think a boundary must be justified by a compelling reason to be legitimate. But the legitimacy of a boundary comes from your sovereignty over your own life, not from external validation. You don't need a doctor's note to set a bedtime. You don't need a therapist's approval to limit contact with a draining friend. You are the authority. Emotionally intelligent people have fully internalized this authority. They set boundaries because they are the experts on their own needs, not because they can cite supporting evidence. Setting boundaries without explanation is an act of self-respect that teaches others how to treat you. When you give a long explanation, you imply that the boundary is up for debate. You invite the other person to poke holes in your reasoning. Oh, you're tired, but this won't take long. You're busy. What are you doing? By contrast, a simple, I'm not available, closes the door to negotiation. It's not rude, it's clear. And clarity is kindness. It saves the other person from the exhausting dance of trying to find a reason they'll accept. The guilt that arises when setting a boundary without explanation is a product of conditioning, not a sign that you're doing something wrong. You've been taught that you must be universally available and agreeable. When you set a boundary, the old programming flares up as guilt. The emotionally intelligent person notices the guilt, allows it, and proceeds anyway. They know that guilt is a feeling, not a fact. Over time, with practice, the guilt diminishes, replaced by a sense of empowerment. There are different types of boundaries: physical, emotional, time, intellectual, material. All can be set without explanation. Please don't hug me. I'm not comfortable talking about that. I have 5 minutes to chat, then I need to go. Let's agree to disagree. I can't lend you money. Each of these is a complete statement. The response to why can be a gentle, "That's just what works for me," or simply, "I'm not going to go into that." If the person persists, they are violating your boundary, and you can reinforce it. "I've said all I'm going to on that." The emotionally intelligent person is not afraid to repeat the boundary calmly, like a broken record, without escalation or justification. Boundaries are also an act of love for others because they model self-care. When you set a boundary with grace and without over-explanation, you give others permission to do the same. You create a culture of mutual respect. Think of the relief you felt when someone declined an invitation with a simple, "Thanks, but I can't make it," without a litany of excuses. You respected them more, not less. Their simplicity signaled that they trusted you to handle their no. That trust is a gift. Chapter 10. Saying no without an essay, the power of a simple decline. The word, no, might be the most difficult one in many vocabularies. It carries the weight of potential disappointment, conflict, and rejection. So we pad it with fluff. "I'd love to, but," followed by an elaborate rationale. We hope the rationale will soften the blow, but it often backfires. The emotionally intelligent person has mastered the art of saying no cleanly, kindly, and without the essay. Why is a simple no so powerful? It communicates self-respect. It says, "My time and energy are valuable, and I make decisions about them deliberately." It communicates clarity. No mixed messages, no false hope. It communicates trust in the relationship. "I believe we can survive my no without a long justification." And it sets a precedent that your no is not the start of a negotiation. The fear that a simple no will damage relationships is largely unfounded in healthy dynamics. People who respect you will respect your no. People who don't will react negatively regardless of the explanation. In fact, over-explaining can provoke more pushback from those who see it as a weakness to exploit. A simple no leaves less to argue with. You're not giving them a "but" to solve. You're just stating a fact. There are many graceful ways to say no without explanation. "Thank you for thinking of me, but I can't. I'm going to pass on that. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available. I have a prior commitment." That commitment can be to yourself, to rest, to your family. It's not their business to audit your commitments. "I'm going to say no this time. I'm not comfortable with that. I'd rather not." Each of these is a complete answer. Notice the absence of "because." If pressed, you can respond with a gentle but firm, "I just can't," or "It's personal," or "I'm not going to get into the details." The broken record technique works wonders here. Calmly repeat your core message without adding new information. Practicing the art of saying no is essential. Start with low-stakes situations. Decline a request from a telemarketer without explanation. Say no to a dessert menu without a dietary lecture. Then move to medium stakes. A social invitation from an acquaintance, a request to volunteer for a small task. Build the muscle. Notice the discomfort and let it pass. Celebrate each no as a victory of self-respect. It's important to distinguish between a simple no and a rude no. A simple no is delivered with a kind tone, perhaps a smile, and often paired with thanks. "Thank you for the invitation, but I can't make it." The rudeness is not in the brevity, it's in the contempt or coldness. You can be warm and brief. Warmth is communicated non-verbally. Your tone and body language can convey that you still value the person while declining their request. This combination, warmth plus brevity, is the hallmark of the emotionally intelligent refusal. Handling the guilt after saying no is a solo mission. Don't look to the other person for absolution. That's just another form of explanation. Sit with the guilt, breathe through it, and remind yourself that you have the right to set limits. Over time, the guilt will diminish as you accumulate evidence that the world doesn't end when you say no. In fact, your relationships may improve because your yeses become more meaningful. When you do say yes, it's fully and willingly, not out of obligation or fear. Chapter 11. Silence is a statement, communicating through presence. In a world that equates communication with talking, silence can feel like a void that must be filled. But silence is not an absence of communication, it is a profound form of it. Emotionally intelligent people understand that what they don't say often carries more weight than what they do. They wield silence not as a weapon of passive aggression, but as a tool of presence, boundary, and wisdom. Silence can communicate confidence. When someone makes a critical or probing remark and you simply look at them with a calm, steady gaze, you are saying, "I am not threatened by your words. I do not need to defend myself." This can be far more powerful than any verbal rebuttal. The other person's words hang in the air, often leading them to self-reflect or backtrack. This is especially effective in negotiations or arguments. The person who speaks first after a silence often gives ground. The emotionally intelligent person is comfortable letting the silence extend, not to manipulate, but to allow the natural pressure of the moment to do its work. Silence can communicate respect for another's process. When someone is sharing something vulnerable or difficult, the urge to fill their pauses with advice, analysis, or reassurance can be strong. But often, what they most need is to be heard, to have space to find their own words. An emotionally intelligent listener gives the gift of silence, demonstrating, "I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, take your time." This form of silence deepens connection far more than a rush to explain or fix. Silence can be a form of self-care. When you are emotionally flooded, angry, hurt, overwhelmed, your first words are often not your wisest ones. The emotionally intelligent person knows to take a time out, to say, "I need a moment," or simply to pause and breathe. This silence prevents the cascade of defensive over-explanation that often escalates conflict. It's a circuit breaker. In that silence, you can reconnect with your emotional self-awareness and choose a response rather than react. There is a difference between constructive silence and the silent treatment. The silent treatment is a punishment, a withdrawal of connection meant to manipulate. Constructive silence is communicated with open body language and a clear intent, not to harm but to create space. You can even verbalize the silence. "I'm taking a moment to gather my thoughts," or, "I don't have a response right now, and that's okay." This transparency ensures the silence is not misinterpreted as stonewalling. Learning to be comfortable with silence requires practice, especially if you've been conditioned to fill every pause. Start by intentionally inserting a 2-second pause before you respond in conversations. Notice the urge to jump in, and let it pass. Experience that the world doesn't collapse. Then extend that to longer pauses. In group settings, allow others to fill the silence. You don't have to be the conversational savior. This practice will gradually rewire your brain's association between silence and danger. Silence also functions as a boundary keeper. When someone asks an intrusive question, silence can be your answer. A raised eyebrow and a pause can communicate, "That's not something I'm going to discuss," without a single word. This is especially powerful because it puts the onus back on the asker to recognize their own breach of etiquette. Many people will fill the silence with a retraction. "Sorry, that's none of my business." You've held your boundary without a fight. Ultimately, silence is a return to a more natural state. Before we learn to over-explain, we simply were. Infants communicate their needs without elaborate justification. Somewhere along the way, we lost that primal confidence. Reclaiming silence is reclaiming a piece of that original self-possession. Chapter 12. Disagreeing without defending, intellectual and emotional autonomy. Disagreement is one of the most common triggers for over-explanation. When someone challenges our beliefs, choices, or perspectives, a primal defense mechanism kicks in. We feel that our reality is under attack, and we must defend it with facts, logic, and passionate rhetoric. The emotionally intelligent person has learned to disagree without defending, maintaining both the relationship and their own peace. Defending a belief often stems from a confusion between self and idea. If I hold a political view and you challenge it, I may feel that you are challenging me, my intelligence, my character, my tribe. This personalization makes me dig in and explain furiously. But in reality, my beliefs are things I hold, not who I am. I can examine them, discard them, or hold them loosely without my very identity being threatened. This detachment is not about being wishy-washy, it's about having the security to say, "That's an interesting perspective. I see it differently," and leave it there. You don't need to convert the other person to validate your own view. Emotionally intelligent people practice intellectual humility. They recognize that their perspective is limited, shaped by their unique experiences and biases. They are open to learning and admit when they're wrong. This doesn't mean they don't have convictions, it means they hold their convictions with an open hand. When disagreed with, they get curious rather than defensive. What leads you to that conclusion? Is a response that opens dialogue without a hint of justification. You're not defending your view, you're exploring theirs. Often, through this exploration, they end up understanding you better, and you might find common ground or simply agree to disagree, without a single defensive word. The phrase, "I can understand why you might see it that way," is a disarming tool. It validates the other person's perspective without agreeing with it, and it requires no explanation of your own stance. It's a conversational gift that lowers the temperature. Similarly, "That hasn't been my experience," is a simple, non-defensive way to offer a differing view. It's personal testimony, not a universal argument. You're not explaining why you're right, you're simply sharing your experience. Another powerful approach is to state your boundary around the topic. "I don't really want to get into a debate about this right now. I value our relationship too much to let this become an argument." This is a meta-statement that protects the connection while shutting down the disagreement. It's not an explanation of your stance, it's an explanation of your relational priority. Emotionally intelligent people know that preserving a relationship is often more important than winning a point. Handling unsolicited advice or criticism is a frequent arena for this skill. When someone tells you what you should do or critiques your choice, the instinct is to justify why you're doing it your way. Instead, you can simply say, "Thank you for that perspective," or, "I'll take that into consideration." You've acknowledged them without engaging in a defense. You can also use the smile and nod if the criticism is trivial. Your inner peace is worth more than correcting every misinformed opinion. There is profound freedom in realizing that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Not every disagreement requires your engagement. You can simply choose not to participate. When you defend, you give the other person power over your emotional state. When you decline to defend, you retain your autonomy. You say, "Through your non-engagement, my position is not up for a public hearing." This is not arrogance, it's healthy self-differentiation. Part 4. Communication Beyond Words. Chapter 13. The Body Speaks, Non-Verbal Confidence. Before you ever utter a word, your body has already spoken. Research by Albert Mehrabian suggested that in communication of feelings, the majority of meaning is conveyed through non-verbal channels: facial expression, tone of voice, posture, gestures. For the emotionally intelligent person, mastering non-verbal communication is essential to the art of not explaining. When your body radiates calm, grounded confidence, the need for verbal justification diminishes. Your presence alone conveys that you are comfortable with your choices. Consider posture. A person who over-explains often has a forward-leaning, almost pleading posture. Their shoulders might be hunched, their hands gesturing anxiously as if trying to physically pull understanding from the listener. In contrast, the emotionally intelligent person often stands or sits with an open, upright posture. Their shoulders are back and relaxed, their spine straight but not rigid. This posture signals self-assurance. It communicates, "I am secure in what I am about to say, and I do not need to convince you." Practicing this posture in everyday situations can actually feed back into your internal state. The power posing effect, while debated, suggests that expansive posture can increase feelings of confidence. Even if the effect is small, it's a reminder that your body influences your mind. Eye contact is another powerful tool. Over-explainers often either avoid eye contact out of shame or lock eyes intensely seeking approval. The emotionally intelligent person uses steady, comfortable eye contact that communicates presence and sincerity. When saying a simple, "No, thank you," maintaining calm eye contact with a gentle smile underscores the completeness of the statement. It says, "This is my answer, and I'm comfortable with it." If you look down or away while saying it, you invite doubt. Practice delivering short, boundaried statements while looking in the mirror, holding your own gaze. Get comfortable with seeing yourself be direct. Voice tone and pace are critical. Over-explanation often comes with a rushed, high-pitched, or wavering tone, as if the speaker is racing to get the justification out before being cut off. The emotionally intelligent person speaks with a calm, measured, and resonant tone. They don't rush. They aren't afraid of pauses. Their voice conveys that they believe what they're saying is sufficient. A simple technique is to consciously lower your voice slightly and slow down your rate of speech when delivering a boundary. This doesn't mean becoming monotone. It means removing the note of pleading or defensiveness. Record yourself practicing simple declines and listen back. Hear the tone and adjust until it sounds grounded. Facial expressions should align with the message. A simple no with a warm, slightly apologetic smile can soften the boundary while maintaining its firmness. You don't need to look severe to be firm. The warmth says, I still care about you, while the brevity says, this is my limit. Incongruence, like saying no while grimacing or looking terrified, undermines the message. The practice of emotional self-awareness helps here. By managing your internal anxiety, your face will naturally reflect more calm. Gestures can enhance or detract. Fidgeting, wringing hands, or touching your face signal anxiety. Intentional, still hands signal composure. When you are not explaining, you can simply rest your hands calmly, perhaps folded in your lap or at your sides. This stillness is a non-verbal exclamation point on your complete sentence. It says, there's nothing more to add. Finally, breath. Your breathing pattern is a non-verbal signal that others pick up unconsciously. Shallow, rapid chest breathing signals stress, which may make others sense an opening to push further. Deep, diaphragmatic breathing signals regulation. Before entering a situation where you'll need to assert a boundary, take a few minutes to breathe deeply and center yourself. Your calm will be felt, and it will communicate that your decision is not born of anxiety but of clarity. By aligning your non-verbal communication with your verbal commitment to not over-explain, you create a powerful, congruent message. You become a person who doesn't need to explain because your entire being is an explanation of someone who knows who they are and what they stand for. Chapter 14. The Power of I Statements, Owning Your Experience Without Justification. In communication, the simplest linguistic shift can dramatically reduce the impulse to explain. I Statements are a classic tool in conflict resolution and assertiveness training, and they are indispensable for the emotionally intelligent person. An I statement expresses your own feelings, needs, or experiences without blaming or evaluating the other person. It inherently requires no justification because it is a statement of personal truth, not a debatable claim. The traditional formula is, I feel emotion when situation because need. For example, I feel frustrated when meetings start late because I value efficiency. Even this can be simplified. The key is that you are owning your experience. You are not saying, you are rude for being late, which would require justification and invite debate. You are stating your internal reality, which is indisputable. No one can argue with, I feel frustrated. They might argue with your assessment of the situation or the reason, but the feeling is yours and needs no defense. In the context of not explaining yourself, I statements allow you to set boundaries without the because being a list of external excuses. I'm not going to make it tonight. I need some time to recharge. The word need is powerful. Needs are non-negotiable. You don't justify a need, you state it. If someone asks why you need to recharge, you can simply say, that's just what I need right now. The conversation ends there. You've anchored the boundary in your internal state, not in the validation of your schedule. I statements also prevent the accusatory you that triggers defensiveness in others. When you say, you always demand explanations, the other person will likely demand you prove it. When you say, I feel uncomfortable when I'm asked to explain personal decisions, you're sharing your experience. The other person is less likely to become defensive and more likely to hear you. This doesn't guarantee they'll respect it, but it shifts the dynamic from courtroom to sharing circle. Using I statements to express decisions without over-explaining takes practice. Instead of, I can't come because my sister is in town and she's only here for one night and I promised her dinner, try, I'd love to, but I have plans with my sister that I'm prioritizing. The I'm prioritizing is an I statement of values. It's clean and true. Instead of, sorry I'm late, traffic was terrible on the 405, there was an accident and then, try, I'm sorry I'm late. I didn't leave enough time for traffic. I'll plan better next time. This owns the responsibility rather than blaming traffic. It's a brief explanation that takes ownership without excessive detail. I statements can also be used to deflect intrusive questions. If someone asks why you're not drinking, a simple, I'm not in the mood for it tonight, or, I'm enjoying my water, thanks, is an I statement that closes the topic. You don't need to explain your relationship with alcohol. Similarly, Why did you leave that job? I decided it wasn't the right fit for me anymore. That's an I statement of decision. It's not a defensive list of the job's faults. Ultimately, I statements reinforce an internal locus of control. You are the source of your feelings, needs, and choices. This is profoundly empowering. You no longer present yourself as a victim of circumstances needing to explain how the universe conspired against you. You are a conscious agent, and your statements reflect that. This shift alone will reduce your over-explaining by half. Chapter 15. Curiosity over justification. Redirecting conversations. One of the most elegant ways to avoid explaining yourself is to turn the focus back on the other person with genuine curiosity. When someone asks a question that feels like a demand for justification, answering with a question, asked in a spirit of openness, not defensiveness, can shift the dynamic entirely. Emotionally intelligent people are masters of this conversational jujitsu. For example, if a colleague asks, "Why did you handle that client call that way?" A defensive over-explainer might launch into a detailed account of their reasoning. An emotionally intelligent person might respond with curiosity, "What about the call raised a concern for you?" Or, "Can you tell me more about what you're thinking?" This does several things. It acknowledges the other person's interest without giving a preemptive defense. It gathers information. Perhaps there's a real issue to discuss, or perhaps they're just curious. And it models a non-defensive, collaborative stance. In personal contexts, curiosity can disarm intrusive questions. "When are you two going to have kids?" a relative asks. An over-explanation might involve a medically detailed, emotionally raw account of fertility struggles or a defensive lecture on personal choice. An emotionally intelligent response with curiosity. "That's such a common question. What makes you ask that now?" Or, "What does having kids mean to you?" This gently places the focus back on the asker, often making them realize the invasiveness of their question without a confrontation. It also preserves your privacy without a wall. Curiosity can also be directed inward as a self-check. When you feel the urge to explain, you can pause and ask yourself, "Why do I feel I need to explain this? What am I hoping to get from this explanation? Is this person actually asking for an explanation, or am I projecting that?" Often, we over-explain to preempt a judgment that hasn't even been made. Curiosity about your own motivation can interrupt the compulsion. Another curiosity technique is the "tell me more" response to criticism. If someone says, "I think you made a mistake," instead of defending, you can say, "I'm interested to hear your perspective. Can you tell me more about what you're seeing?" This invites elaboration that might reveal useful feedback or, conversely, reveal that the criticism is baseless. Either way, you haven't wasted energy on a defense. You've stayed open and curious, which is a position of strength. Curiosity is also the engine of genuine understanding in relationships. When you replace explanation with questions, you learn more about the other person's world. You might discover that their demand for an explanation comes from their own anxiety, not your actions. "It sounds like my saying no brings up some worry for you. Can we talk about that?" This shifts the conversation from your defense to their emotional process. It's a generous move that deepens connection. The key is that the curiosity must be genuine, not a manipulative tactic. If you're asking questions with a sarcastic edge or to deflect permanently, it will feel like an evasion. But if you're truly curious, the other person will often feel heard and disarmed, even if you never answer their original question. You've communicated that you care about the relationship, which is often what the demand for an explanation was really about in the first place. Chapter 16. Listening is the ultimate non-explanation. Listening is the silent partner of not explaining. When you are a deep, active listener, you create a space where others feel so heard that they are less likely to demand explanations from you. Moreover, listening itself can be your response, a way of showing you understand their concern without verbally justifying yourself. Emotionally intelligent people are exceptional listeners, and this skill is central to their ability to avoid over-explaining. Active listening involves fully concentrating on what the other person is saying, rather than mentally preparing your defense. When someone expresses displeasure or confusion about your actions, listen to their entire statement. Nod, maintain eye contact, and use minimal encouragers like, I see, or, go on. Often, they just need to vent or feel acknowledged. Once they've finished, you might simply say, "I hear you," or, "Thank you for sharing that with me." You've acknowledged their perspective without agreeing or disagreeing, and crucially, without explaining yours. This can be remarkably satisfying for the other person and disorienting in a good way. They expected a fight and instead received a witness. Reflective listening takes this further. You paraphrase what you heard to confirm understanding. So it sounds like when I canceled our plans, you felt hurt and unimportant. By reflecting their feelings, you show empathy. This often de-escalates the situation immediately. The person feels seen, and their demand for an explanation may dissolve. They might even say, "Well, yeah, but I get that things come up." You've allowed them to arrive at understanding on their own, without your having to explain. Listening also buys you time. When someone asks a loaded question, instead of reacting, you can simply pause and listen, to them, and to yourself. That pause allows your emotional brain to settle. You can then choose a brief response or ask a clarifying question. The act of listening internally to your own emotional state is part of this. What am I feeling right now? What is the wisest response? This internal listening is the essence of emotional intelligence. Being a good listener builds trust capital. When people feel consistently heard by you, they are more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt when you set a boundary or act in a way they don't understand. They think, well, I don't get it, but this person always listens to me, so I trust there's a good reason. Your reputation as a listener precedes you and reduces the need to explain. Listening also models the behavior you wish to see. By not jumping to conclusions or demanding justifications from others, you create a reciprocal expectation. Over time, the people in your life learn that you won't grill them about their choices, and they tend to extend the same courtesy. The culture of the relationship shifts from a courtroom to a sanctuary. Finally, listening to silence, both your own and others, is a profound practice. When you've said your simple piece and there's silence, listen to it. Don't rush to fill it with more words. That silence might be the other person processing, respecting your boundary, or simply experiencing the unusual sensation of a complete sentence. Let the silence do its work. In that silence, you are communicating more than any explanation could. I am at peace with my words, and I am at peace with you. Part 5. Relationships without the need to explain. Chapter 17. Intimacy without justification. Trusting those who truly know you. In close relationships, romantic partners, dear friends, family, the dance of explanation can be either a source of deep connection or a minefield of resentment. Emotionally intelligent people navigate intimacy with a radical trust that those who truly know and love them do not require constant justification. They cultivate relationships where their character is known, so their individual actions need little defense. The foundation of such relationships is a track record of integrity. When you consistently act in alignment with your values, your loved ones come to trust your judgment. They may not always understand a specific choice, but they trust you. This trust is built over time, and it is the ultimate immunity from having to explain. If your partner knows you prioritize honesty, then when you say, "I need a quiet night," they trust it's true, not a cover for something else. If your friend knows you are loyal, your inability to attend their event is assumed to be a genuine conflict, not a slight. This trust is earned, but it is also chosen. You choose to be with people who extend it. Vulnerability without over-explanation is a key skill. There is a difference between sharing your inner world as an act of intimacy and doing so as a defensive move. Intimate sharing sounds like, "I'm feeling really overwhelmed with work, and I'd love your support." Defensive sharing sounds like, "I can't hang out because I have this project, and my boss is breathing down my neck, and you know how it is with the economy." The former invites connection, the latter invites scrutiny. Emotionally intelligent people lean into the former. They express their needs and feelings directly, trusting that the relationship can hold that vulnerability without requiring a PowerPoint presentation. They also extend the same grace to their loved ones. They don't demand explanations for every mood, decision, or mistake. When a partner says, "I had a bad day," they don't immediately demand details or demand to know why they're in a bad mood. They offer support and let the story unfold if it's ready to be shared. This creates a safe space where neither party feels they must justify their inner experience. The relationship becomes a haven from the world's demands for explanation, not another source of them. Inevitably, misunderstandings will arise. The difference in an emotionally intelligent relationship is the response. Instead of a spiral of accusations and defenses, there is a pause. One person might say, "I'm feeling a disconnect. Can we talk about what happened from your perspective?" The other listens, reflects, and then shares their own perspective without blame. There is room for disagreement without a demand for one party to be wrong. The goal is not to win but to understand and reconnect. In such a dynamic, over-explanation is unnecessary because the intention to be fair and loving is assumed. Trusting those who know you also means allowing them to see your inconsistencies without demanding you explain them. You are a complex human, and you will sometimes act in ways that surprise even yourself. In a secure relationship, you can say, "I'm not sure why I did that. I'm trying to figure it out." That's honest and requires no fake explanation. The emotionally intelligent person is comfortable saying, "I don't know," to a loved one. This vulnerability is a testament to the strength of the bond. Ultimately, intimacy without justification is a practice of letting love be bigger than understanding. You can love someone deeply and still not understand every part of them. You can feel loved deeply and still not be perfectly understood. The emotional safety of the relationship does not come from exhaustive transparency but from a bedrock of mutual respect and care. When you have that, explanations become optional, offered as gifts of closeness, not as tolls to pass the gate. Chapter 18. Handling conflict gracefully, why emotionally intelligent people don't escalate. Conflict is the crucible where the habit of over-explanation can do the most damage. In the heat of an argument, the instinct to defend, explain, and justify is at its strongest. Yet this is precisely when explanation is most likely to be interpreted as attack, dismissal, or blame shifting. Emotionally intelligent people handle conflict with a focus on resolution and connection, not on winning a debate, and this focus naturally minimizes destructive over-explanation. The first principle is emotional regulation under fire. When conflict triggers a fight or flight response, the emotionally intelligent person recognizes the signs: racing heart, heat, tunnel vision, and takes steps to regulate before speaking. This might mean calling a timeout. "I need a few minutes to calm down so I can be fair to both of us." This is not an explanation, it's a process statement. By regulating first, they avoid the cascade of defensive verbiage that escalates conflict. When they do speak, they use "I" statements and focus on their own experience and needs. "I felt hurt when you canceled our plans without letting me know. In the future, I'd really appreciate a quick text." There's no lengthy explanation of why they felt hurt, no citing of past grievances, no justification of their right to feel hurt. The statement is clean, vulnerable, and forward-looking. It invites collaboration, not counter-argument. They listen intently to the other person's response, even if it includes criticism. If the other person says, "Well, you always overreact," the over-explainer would launch into a defense of their emotional proportionality, complete with examples. The emotionally intelligent person might say, "It sounds like you experience my reactions as too big for the situation. Can you help me understand what that's like for you?" This sidesteps the defense entirely and moves into curiosity. It de-escalates because it isn't a counter-punch. Apologies are offered without elaborate justification. A simple, sincere, "I'm sorry I hurt you," is far more powerful than, "I'm sorry, but I was really stressed because of work and the traffic and." The "but" negates the apology. It's a form of explanation that shifts blame. Emotionally intelligent people take ownership. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do my best to do better." No explanation needed. If context is truly necessary for the solution, it can be offered later, after accountability has been taken. They also avoid the trap of needing the last word. Many conflicts drag on because each person feels they must have the final, definitive explanation that makes the other see the light. The emotionally intelligent person is comfortable leaving a disagreement unresolved for the moment. "I can see we're not going to see eye to eye on this tonight. Let's take a break and revisit it when we're both less activated." This is not a surrender, it's a strategic pause that prevents the accumulation of verbal wounds. Setting boundaries within conflict is crucial. "I'm not willing to continue this conversation if there's yelling. Let's talk when we can do so calmly." No explanation of why yelling is harmful is needed, it's a limit. If the other person persists, the emotionally intelligent person will follow through. "I'm going to step away now. I'm happy to talk later." They don't get drawn into a meta-argument about the boundary. Ultimately, the goal in conflict is not to be understood but to understand. When you genuinely seek to understand the other person, you are less focused on defending your own position. You ask questions, reflect back, and validate their feelings even if you disagree with their conclusions. This de-escalation is profound. The other person feels seen, and often, their need for you to explain yourself diminishes because the real need was to be heard. By listening, you've already given them what an explanation never could. Chapter 19. Leading without lecturing, the quiet authority. Leadership, whether in a formal position or in the informal influence we all have, is an arena where the urge to explain can either build trust or erode it. The best leaders, those with high emotional intelligence, understand that their authority is not based on how well they can justify every decision, but on the clarity of their vision and the consistency of their character. They lead without lecturing, inspire without over-explaining. In a professional setting, the boss who over-explains every directive is exhausting. Their emails are essays, their meetings are marathons of justification. This signals insecurity and micromanagement. The emotionally intelligent leader gives clear, concise direction. We're going to pivot to this strategy. Here's the one sentence why. Because our current path isn't meeting our core goal. I'm happy to discuss further in Q&A. They offer explanation as an option, not a compulsion. They trust their team to execute, and they trust that their track record will earn them the benefit of the doubt. If someone needs more context to do their job well, it's provided. But it's not offered as a preemptive defense. This approach empowers others. When a leader doesn't over-justify, they leave room for their team to think critically and contribute. Instead of, we need to do X because A, B, and C, and don't even think about Y or Z, they say, we need to achieve outcome OI suggest X. What are your thoughts? The dialogue is open, not closed by an avalanche of explanation. This models the kind of confident, collaborative culture that emotionally intelligent people cultivate. In parenting, not explaining every decision can be a radical act. Children often ask, why? And while it's important to foster understanding, there are times when a parent's simple, because I said so, or, that's the decision for now, is appropriate. When parents over-explain every rule, they unintentionally teach children that all parental authority must be justified to the child's satisfaction. This can lead to endless negotiation and erosion of parental leadership. The emotionally intelligent parent explains when it serves the child's growth, but also asserts non-negotiable boundaries without explanation when necessary, such as in matters of safety or values. The child learns that some things are simply the way they are, and that the parent is a calm, firm anchor. In friendships and community roles, quiet authority looks like being the person who doesn't get swept up in drama, who doesn't need to defend their actions in the court of public opinion. When gossip arises, the emotionally intelligent person doesn't mount a defense campaign. They continue living their life in alignment with their values. Their consistent behavior over time is the only explanation they need. People come to know them by their fruits, not by their press releases. Leading without lecturing also means being willing to admit mistakes without a defensive saga. A simple, I got that wrong. Here's what we'll do to fix it, as a mark of strong leadership. It builds immense trust because it signals that the leader prioritizes the mission and the team over their own ego. The absence of a long justification communicates that there's no excuse making, just accountability and forward motion. The quiet authority of the emotionally intelligent person is magnetic. In a noisy world, their calm, unapologetic presence is a relief. People are drawn to leaders who seem to be anchored in something deeper than the need for approval. By refusing to explain themselves into the ground, they create a space where others can also relax and simply be. Chapter 20. Letting go of toxic dynamics, when explanation is a trap. Not everyone in your life will celebrate your emotional evolution. Some individuals and systems are built on a foundation of requiring constant explanation, and they will resist your efforts to stop. For these toxic dynamics, the only winning move may be to disengage entirely. Emotionally intelligent people recognize when explanation is being demanded not for understanding but for control, and they refuse to play the game. Toxic dynamics often involve a pattern where you are perpetually on trial. A family member, partner, or friend constantly questions your motives, decisions, and worth. They demand justifications, and no matter what you provide, it's never enough. The goal is not understanding. It's keeping you in a one-down position, always seeking their approval. If you try to set a boundary without explanation, they may accuse you of being secretive, uncaring, or guilty. This is a trap designed to pull you back into the cycle of defense. The only way out is to stop defending altogether and, if necessary, limit or end the relationship. Gaslighting is a particularly insidious form of this. A gaslighter will twist reality to make you doubt your own perceptions, leading you to over-explain in an attempt to prove your sanity. That's not what happened, they say, and you launch into a detailed account, trying to anchor yourself in facts. The gaslighter then picks apart your account, increasing your confusion. The emotionally intelligent response to gaslighting is to disengage. I remember it differently, and I'm not going to argue about it. You don't need to prove your reality to someone who is invested in dismantling it. Your memory is valid because it's yours. Chronic boundary violators are another category. Some people hear your simple no and treat it as the opening bid of a negotiation. They will wear you down with endless "but why?" questions. Giving them an explanation only gives them ammunition. You're tired. You can sleep when you're dead. Come on, just one drink. In these cases, the broken record technique is useful, but if the violation is persistent, the relationship itself may need to be reevaluated. Emotionally intelligent people are not afraid to prune their social circles. They understand that they are not obligated to maintain relationships with those who refuse to respect their boundaries, no matter the shared history. In the workplace, a toxic boss or colleague might use demands for explanation as a tool of micromanagement or harassment. There are situations where you must provide explanations as part of your job, but you can learn to distinguish between reasonable accountability and coercive control. If you are being asked to justify every minute of your day in a way that feels degrading, you can set professional boundaries. I'm happy to provide a summary of my project progress weekly, but I don't find it productive to account for every hour. Can we agree on that format? If the answer is no, you may need to seek a healthier work environment. Letting go of toxic dynamics is an act of profound self-care. It can be painful, especially when it involves family or long-term friends. The urge to explain one last time in hopes of finally being understood is strong. But as the saying goes, you can't explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. The closure you seek must come from within. You accept that they may never get it, and you release the relationship. This frees up an immense amount of energy that was being drained by the toxic dynamic. In the space left by those relationships, you can cultivate connections with people who don't require you to jump through hoops of justification. Your tribe is out there. People who appreciate your directness, who respect your boundaries without challenge, and who understand that your silence is not a threat. Finding them requires being that person yourself. As you stop explaining, you naturally attract those who value authenticity. Part 6. Cultivating the no explanation lifestyle. Chapter 21. Building unshakable self-trust. The journey to stop explaining yourself is fundamentally a journey of learning to trust yourself. Self-trust is the unwavering belief that you can handle whatever arises from your choices, that your decisions are valid even when others disagree, and that you will be your own support system when things go wrong. Without self-trust, you will always look to others for validation, and explanation becomes the bridge you build between their approval and your self-worth. Self-trust is built through a practice of making and keeping commitments to yourself. This sounds simple but is profoundly challenging. Start small. If you tell yourself you're going to take a walk at lunch, do it. If you decide you're not going to check email after 8 p.m., honor that. Each time you follow through on a promise to yourself, you deposit a coin in the bank of self-trust. Each time you break a promise, you make a withdrawal. Over time, you build a reputation with yourself. You learn that your word to yourself is gold. When you trust yourself, you no longer need to over-explain to others because you know that even if your decision leads to an outcome you don't like, you will handle it. You won't fall apart. You won't need someone else to fix it. This inner safety net is the bedrock of confident, unapologetic action. You can say no to a social event trusting that you'll be okay with the potential FOMO because you'll take care of yourself. You can voice an unpopular opinion trusting that you can handle the disagreement without crumbling. Self-trust also means trusting your intuition. Our bodies and subconscious minds process information that our conscious minds miss. That gut feeling that something is off, that urge to decline an offer even though you can't articulate why, these are valid data points. The over-explainer dismisses these feelings because they can't be justified with logic. The emotionally intelligent person trusts them. I don't have a concrete reason, it just doesn't feel right for me. That is a complete and valid reason. By honoring your intuition, you strengthen it. Making decisions and standing by them, even small ones, builds self-trust. The over-explainer often second-guesses every decision, which is why they need others to affirm the decision's correctness. To break this, practice making a decision and closing the door on rumination. Decide what you'll order at a restaurant quickly and don't look back. Decide what you'll do with your weekend and commit. Even if it turns out not to be the perfect choice, you handle it. You learn that a bad decision isn't catastrophic. This builds resilience and reduces the need for external validation. Self-trust involves accepting that you will make mistakes and that mistakes don't define you. If you make a poor choice, you don't need to explain it away to preserve your ego. You can say to yourself, okay, that didn't work out. What can I learn? And move on. To others, a simple, I misjudged that. I'll do it differently next time, is all that's needed. Your self-trust isn't shaken because it's not based on a myth of perfection, it's based on a commitment to growth and self-compassion. Building self-trust also means becoming your own emotional anchor. When you're upset, you soothe yourself. When you're uncertain, you talk yourself through it with kindness. You become the parent to your inner child that you might not have had. This internal security means you don't urgently need someone else to make you feel okay. The compulsion to explain as a bid for comfort subsides, because you can comfort yourself. Chapter 22. Mindfulness in the present moment, the death of excessive explanation. Mindfulness, the practice of non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, is a powerful antidote to over-explanation. Over-explanation is often rooted in the future, anticipating others' judgments, or the past, rehashing past criticisms. It takes you out of the here and now. Mindfulness brings you back, and in the present moment, the need to explain often dissolves. Consider the mental state before an over-explanation. You are likely imagining a future scenario. If I don't explain now, they'll think X, and then Y will happen, and I'll feel terrible. This is a mental construction, not reality. Mindfulness anchors you in what is actually happening right now. A person asked a question. You feel a sensation of anxiety, the room is a certain temperature, there are sounds. By grounding in the present, you see that the catastrophic future is just a thought. You don't have to act on it. You can simply respond to the actual question with presence. Mindfulness also helps you ride out the urge to explain. The urge arises as a sensation in your body, a tightening, a restlessness, a mental pressure. Instead of immediately acting on it, you can mindfully observe it. This is what the urge to explain feels like. It's uncomfortable, but it's just a sensation. It will pass. You breathe into it. You don't try to push it away, but you don't feed it either. In a short time, it does pass. The more you practice this, the more you learn that you don't have to obey every impulse. The practice of mindful listening, described earlier, is a formal application. When someone is speaking, you give them your full attention, without planning your response. This is purely present moment awareness. When they finish, you take a mindful breath and respond from that presence. Often, the response that arises is simpler, more authentic, and less loaded with justification because it comes from a calm, centered place rather than a reactive one. A daily mindfulness meditation practice rewires the brain over time. Studies show that regular meditation increases gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive function and emotion regulation, and decreases activity in the amygdala, the fear center. Essentially, it strengthens the very brain regions that allow you to pause and choose not to over-explain. Even 10 minutes a day of sitting and following your breath can, over weeks, lead to noticeable changes in your impulse control and emotional reactivity. Informal mindfulness throughout the day is equally important. Pick routine activities. Brushing your teeth, waiting in line, drinking coffee, and do them with full attention. Notice the sensations, the thoughts that come and go. This trains the mind to stay present. When you enter a social situation where you might over-explain, your mind is already in the habit of presence, not runaway anticipation. Mindfulness also cultivates a non-judgmental attitude toward yourself. Much over-explanation is driven by harsh self-criticism. I'm so stupid for feeling this way, I need to justify it. Mindfulness teaches you to observe your feelings and thoughts without labeling them as good or bad. You can notice, there's the thought that I'm stupid, and let it go. This self-compassion reduces the shame that fuels the need to explain. You accept yourself as you are in this moment, and that acceptance is felt by others. You don't need to explain your messiness because you've already accepted it. Chapter 23. From people-pleasing to self-fulfillment. People-pleasing is a deeply ingrained pattern for many over-explainers. The people-pleaser believes their worth is determined by how much they do for others and how little trouble they cause. Explanation becomes a tool to manage others' happiness and avoid any possible displeasure. Transitioning from people-pleasing to self-fulfillment is a radical shift that dramatically reduces the need to explain. People-pleasing is not kindness, it's a survival strategy often born in childhood. You learned that to be safe and loved, you needed to manage the emotions of those around you. You became hyper-attuned to others' needs and expectations and developed a habit of preemptively explaining any deviation from those expectations. As an adult, this leaves you exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from your own desires. The journey to self-fulfillment begins with the radical idea that your needs, desires, and limits are just as important as anyone else's. This is not selfishness, it's healthy self-regard. You start to ask yourself, in any situation, what do I want? What do I need? For a lifelong people-pleaser, this question can be shockingly difficult to answer. You may have so suppressed your own preferences that you don't even know them. The practice is to start tuning in. Before automatically saying yes to a request, pause and check in with yourself. Do I actually want to do this? How does my body feel when I consider it? Trust the answer, even if it's, I don't want to. When you start acting on your own preferences, the people-pleasing alarm goes off. You anticipate disappointment and disapproval. The old pattern wants to rush in with explanations to soften the blow. This is where you must hold firm. You can be kind and direct. Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not going to be able to do that. The discomfort you feel is the withdrawal symptom from the drug of approval. It will pass. Each time you choose yourself without over-explaining, you teach your brain that it's safe to do so. You also start to discover who you really are, rather than who you've been trained to be. Self-fulfillment means recognizing that your purpose on this earth is not to meet everyone else's expectations. It's to live out your own unique calling. When you are aligned with a sense of purpose, decisions become clearer. You can more easily say no to things that pull you off course. And you don't need to explain because your purpose is your guide, not subject to public vote. If you know your goal is to write a book, declining a social invitation to spend the evening writing doesn't require an elaborate excuse. I'm working on a project is sufficient. Your commitment to your self-fulfillment is the only justification needed. Recovering people-pleasers often find it helpful to gradually disclose their true selves. You don't have to make a grand announcement. Start with small acts of preference. Ordering what you actually want at a restaurant, suggesting the movie you want to see, stating your opinion without hedging. Each time you do this without over-explaining, you reclaim a piece of your authentic self. People who truly care about you will adjust. Those who only like the compliant, explanatory version of you may drift away. That's a good thing. It makes room for relationships that are based on the real you. Self-fulfillment also involves learning to receive as well as give. People-pleasers are often uncomfortable with receiving because they feel they must constantly earn their place. But healthy relationships are reciprocal. When you allow others to do things for you without feeling the need to explain why you deserve it, you honor their ability to give. You trust that they value you, not your justifications. This is a profound shift from transactional to relational living. Chapter 24. Practicing the Art of Not Explaining, Daily Exercises and Reflections. Transformation requires practice. Here are concrete daily exercises and reflections to help you internalize the art of not explaining yourself. Treat this as a gym for your emotional intelligence. The one-sentence journal. Each evening, write down one instance where you wanted to over-explain but didn't. Describe the situation, the urge you felt, and what you said or didn't say. Then note how you felt afterward. This builds awareness and reinforces the positive outcome of your new behavior. Over time, you'll see a pattern of success. The No Explanation Challenge. Choose one day a week where you commit to not over-explaining any of your choices. This doesn't mean being mute or rude. It means giving simple, complete responses to any queries about your decisions. If someone asks why you're not doing something, your answer is, "It just doesn't work for me today." Carry a small notebook to tally each time you succeed. If you catch yourself mid-explanation, stop, smile, and say, "Actually, that's all I need to say about it." Count it as a learning moment, not a failure. Boundary rehearsal. Write down 3 boundaries you'd like to set that you've been over-explaining. For each, craft a simple, kind statement of no more than 2 sentences. For example, I've decided to keep my weekends work-free. I won't be checking emails during that time. Rehearse these statements aloud in front of a mirror, paying attention to your posture, voice, and eye contact. Practice until they feel natural. Then, deploy them in real life. The rehearsal reduces anxiety. The pause practice. In every conversation this week, intentionally insert a 1 to 2 second pause before you respond to any question, even casual ones like, "How are you?" This builds the habit of not reacting instantly. Use the pause to breathe and check in with yourself. Notice how often your mind wants to run off with an explanation. Just observe it. This simple exercise rewires the impulse control pathway. Compassionate inquiry with a partner. If you have a trusted friend or partner who is also on this journey, practice together. One person asks a potentially triggering question, e.g., "Why didn't you call me back?" And the other practices a non-explanatory response, "I'm sorry, I dropped the ball." All do better. Give each other feedback on tone and body language. This safe environment builds skills for the real world. The why meditation. Sit quietly and bring to mind a recent situation where you over-explained. Now ask yourself, why? And listen to the answer. Then ask, why? To that answer. Drill down through the layers, boredom, guilt, fear of abandonment, until you reach a core wound. Sit with that wound and offer it compassion. Say to yourself, "Of course I felt that need. It makes sense. But I am safe now." This process integrates the psychological roots and loosens their grip. Celebrate small wins. Each time you successfully decline to over-explain, do a small internal celebration. Yes, I did it. You can even have a physical token, a pebble in a jar, a check mark on a calendar. The brain learns through reward. By consciously rewarding the new behavior, you accelerate the extinction of the old compulsion. Read and reflect on role models. Think of public figures, literary characters, or people you know who embody quiet confidence. How do they handle intrusive questions? Imagine them in your situation. What would they do? Write a short reflection. This mental modeling is a powerful way to adopt new behaviors. Consistency is key. Like any skill, the art of not explaining improves with regular practice. Be patient with yourself. You've had a lifetime of conditioning. It will take time to rewire. But each small success is a victory, and they add up to a profound transformation. Part 7. The Deeper Philosophy. Chapter 25. The Freedom of Being Misunderstood, Emerson and Beyond. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great American essayist, wrote in his essay, Self-Reliance, Is It So Bad, Then, to Be Misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. This is the rallying cry of the emotionally intelligent person who has stopped explaining. The fear of being misunderstood is a cage. The acceptance, even embrace, of being misunderstood is freedom. The fear of misunderstanding is rooted in a desire for belonging. We equate being understood with being accepted. If someone misinterprets our actions, we fear they will reject us. This fear keeps us in a constant state of self-defense. But Emerson's insight is that the greatest contributors to humanity were routinely misunderstood in their time. Their visions were too new, their perspectives too far from the consensus. If they had spent their energy explaining themselves to everyone who didn't get it, they would have had no energy left for their work. For the average person, the stakes are lower, but the principle holds. When you stop caring that everyone understands you, you reclaim a massive amount of mental real estate. You no longer tailor your life for public consumption. You make your choices based on your values and let the chips fall where they may. Some will misunderstand, some will criticize, some will gossip. Let them. Your life is yours to live, not theirs to grade. This is not a license for poor communication where clarity truly matters. In collaborative work and close relationships, striving for mutual understanding is an act of care. But the key word is striving, not desperation. You do your part to communicate clearly and kindly, and then you release the outcome. You cannot control another's interpretation. If they choose to misunderstand, that is their prerogative. You can walk away with a clear conscience. Embracing the possibility of being misunderstood also makes you braver in self-expression. You can share unconventional ideas, set unpopular boundaries, and live an offbeat life without the constant need to justify it. You become an original rather than a copy. The world is changed by those who dare to be themselves, not by those who perfectly explain themselves. Your quiet example of self-acceptance may be the very thing that gives someone else permission to do the same. There is a spiritual dimension to this freedom. When you stop seeking the approval of the herd, you connect more deeply with your own soul and, for many, with a higher power. Your validation comes from within and from above, not from without. You walk your path with an inner authority that cannot be shaken by the world's opinions. This is the freedom that the great sages and philosophers have pointed to for millennia. It is available to you now, in this moment, simply by choosing to let go of the need to be understood. Chapter 26. Authenticity and the Unexamined Self. Authenticity is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean to live authentically? It means that your outer life matches your inner reality. It's the congruence between your values, feelings, and actions. Over-explanation often signals a gap in authenticity. We are trying to bridge the gap between what we did and what we think we should have done, or between what we feel and what we think is acceptable to feel. The emotionally intelligent person pursues authenticity as a practice. They regularly check in with themselves. Is this action aligned with my values? Is this, yes, genuine? Am I saying this because I mean it or because it's expected? This ongoing self-examination is not navel-gazing, it's maintenance of integrity. When you are living authentically, you have far less to explain because your life makes sense as a coherent whole. Even if others don't understand a particular choice, they sense the integrity behind it. And you don't feel the dissonance that drives you to justify. There is, however, a paradox. The authentic self is not a fixed thing to be discovered, but a process to be engaged in. We are always changing, and sometimes we do things that surprise ourselves. This is where the unexamined self comes in. The emotionally intelligent person is comfortable saying, I don't know why I did that. It just felt right at the time, or, I'm still figuring out what I think about that. This is a form of authenticity that doesn't require a fully formed explanation. It's the authenticity of being a work in progress. The pressure to have a clear, defensible reason for everything is a tyranny of the rational mind. It denies the reality that much of human life is guided by intuition, emotion, and the subconscious. By demanding an explanation for everything, we lose touch with the wild, mysterious parts of ourselves that can't be reduced to a bullet point list. The emotionally intelligent person makes peace with this mystery within themselves. They don't need to fully understand themselves to be themselves. Authenticity also involves embracing the parts of yourself that might not be socially celebrated, your weird hobbies, your unconventional beliefs, your selfish needs. When you hide these, you create a secret life that requires constant explanation to maintain the facade. When you openly and unapologetically integrate them, the need for the facade disappears. You can simply say, yeah, I'm really into collecting vintage postcards. It brings me joy. No justification needed. Your joy is the reason. To live authentically without over-explanation is to trust that you are enough as you are. You don't need to provide a resume of reasons for your existence. You are not a theory to be proven. You are a life to be lived. When you deeply internalize this, you stop talking so much about why you are the way you are and start simply being the way you are. That presence is a gift to the world. Chapter 27. The Spiritual Dimension. Letting your life speak. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the power of silence, the limits of language, and the importance of witnessing over explaining. From the Quaker concept of letting your life speak, to the Taoist idea that those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know, there is a rich spiritual heritage that supports the emotionally intelligent approach to life. Let your life speak is a phrase that suggests your actions, your way of being in the world, are the ultimate communication. You don't need to proclaim your values, you live them, and they are visible. You don't need to explain your intentions, the outcomes of your consistent behavior over time will clarify them. This is a profoundly peaceful way to exist. It removes the burden of verbal self-justification and replaces it with a call to simply be a person of character. The Tao Te Ching says, he who justifies himself does not convince. This is a psychological truth wrapped in spiritual wisdom. When you justify yourself, you signal doubt. The very act of explaining often undermines the very thing you're trying to prove. In contrast, a person who is centered in their truth doesn't need to advertise it. It radiates. This is the Wu Wei, or effortless action, of emotional intelligence. The Buddhist concept of non-attachment applies beautifully here. Much of our suffering around explanation comes from our attachment to outcomes. We want to be seen a certain way, we want to avoid conflict, we want to be approved of. When we let go of those attachments, the need to control the narrative through explanation fades. We can act with compassion and clarity, and then accept whatever response comes. This doesn't make us passive, it makes us free. In the Christian tradition, there is the example of Jesus before his accusers, who at times remained silent. His silence was not weakness but a transcendence of the power games being played. He did not owe them an explanation because his truth was not dependent on their acceptance. For the emotionally intelligent person facing a hostile interrogation, this kind of sacred silence can be a model, not a stubborn, angry silence, but a peaceful refusal to engage in a battle that diminishes the soul. Spiritual practice, whatever form it takes, cultivates the inner stillness that is the antidote to over-explanation. Prayer, meditation, time in nature, contemplative reading, all these draw us out of the frantic need to manage others' perceptions and into a deeper connection with something larger. From that place, the small dramas of social approval lose their power. We see them as the fleeting storms they are. We can smile, say a kind and simple word, and let them pass. Ultimately, the spiritual dimension reminds us that we are not here to justify our existence. We are here to experience it, to grow, to love, and to contribute. Your life is not a problem to be solved or a case to be argued. It is a mystery to be lived. And mysteries, by their nature, resist explanation. They are simply beheld. Chapter 28. Emotional intelligence is a legacy, inspiring others through your silence. The final gift of your journey away from over-explanation is the impact it has on others. When you embody the quiet confidence of emotional intelligence, you become a model that others unconsciously emulate. Your refusal to explain yourself becomes a permission slip for them to do the same. In this way, you contribute to a cultural shift away from defensiveness and toward authenticity. Think of the people who have most inspired you. Were they the ones who talked endlessly about their reasoning, or the ones who simply lived their truth with grace? Chances are, it was the latter. There is a magnetic quality to a person who is unapologetically themselves. They make you feel that you, too, could be that free. This is the legacy of the emotionally intelligent person, not a list of teachings, but a lived example. In your family, choosing not to over-explain can break generational patterns. Perhaps you grew up with parents who demanded justifications or who over-explained themselves, creating an atmosphere of tension. By doing it differently, you offer the next generation a new template. Your children, nieces, nephews, or younger friends learn that it's okay to simply say no, to have private thoughts, to be their own person without a constant report to the authority figures. This is a profound gift. In your workplace, your quiet confidence can shift the culture. As you refuse to engage in defensive posturing, you invite others to focus on solutions rather than blame. Meetings become more efficient. Trust grows. Others start to adopt your simple, direct style. You may even become a mentor without trying, simply because people observe how you handle pressure and want to learn. In your community, your authentic living is a quiet act of rebellion against a culture of constant self-surveillance and performative accountability. You show that it's possible to be accountable for your actions without being on a perpetual witness stand. You show that privacy and integrity can coexist. You show that one can be a good person without explaining exactly how or why. This is a radical act in a time when everything is expected to be posted, discussed, and justified. The ripple effects are unknowable. The person you casually show grace to by not demanding an explanation might, years later, do the same for someone else. The friend who sees you set a simple boundary without a meltdown might finally set one of their own. The child who watches you might grow up with a healthier relationship to guilt and self-expression. You never know what seeds you are planting. But your legacy is not your primary motivation. You don't stop explaining yourself to be a role model, you do it for your own peace. The fact that it helps others is a beautiful byproduct. It's the natural overflow of a life lived in emotional integrity. The stream doesn't set out to nourish the land, it simply flows, and the land flourishes along its banks. As you continue on this journey, hold this vision: a world where more and more people have stepped off the witness stand, where we listen more than we defend, where silence is not awkward but sacred, where being misunderstood is no longer a crisis. You are part of that world coming into being. Every time you resist the urge to over-explain, you are casting a vote for a more peaceful, authentic humanity. Conclusion. The Quiet Revolution. We have traveled a long path together. From the psychological roots of over-explanation through the skills of emotional intelligence, from boundary setting to spiritual philosophy, we've explored why the emotionally intelligent never explain themselves and how you can join their ranks. Now, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? The answer is both simple and demanding. You will practice. You will catch yourself in the act of over-explaining and pause. You will try out a simple no, and feel the rush of anxiety and survive it. You will set a boundary and not break it. You will let a misunderstanding stand and discover that the world didn't collapse. You will slowly, imperfectly, build a new way of being. There will be stumbles. You'll find yourself halfway through a defensive monologue and realize what you're doing. That's okay. Stop. Say, you know, I'm over-explaining. Let me just say that I've made my decision, and I'm good with it. This kind of honest recovery is itself an act of emotional intelligence. It shows you're human and you're trying. People respect that. The Quiet Revolution is not a loud, dramatic event. It's a million small moments of choosing yourself. It's the inner shift from seeking external validation to resting in internal clarity. It's the gradual realization that you are not on trial. Your life is not a case to be argued. You are a person to be lived. Imagine your life a year from now, if you commit to this path. You will have more energy because you're not constantly spinning your wheels in justification. Your relationships will be healthier because they're based on who you are, not who you've persuaded people you are. You'll have more time because you're not crafting essays in your head. You'll know yourself more deeply because you've listened to your own silence. You'll be a calming presence in a frantic world, and you'll have inspired others, perhaps without ever realizing it. The emotionally intelligent people who never explain themselves are not a different species. They are simply people who have learned, through pain and practice, that their worth is inherent. They have discovered the secret that the quieter you become, the more you can hear. The less you explain, the more you are understood. The less you defend, the more you are respected. This is the paradox at the heart of emotional intelligence. Now, go. Start your quiet revolution. You don't need to explain it to anyone. Just live it. Afterward, a personal invitation to silence. Before you close this book, I invite you to sit for a moment in silence. Right here, right now. Put down the book, close your eyes if you like, and just be with yourself for 60 seconds. Don't plan, don't rehearse, don't explain anything to anyone, not even to yourself. Just breathe, and exist. That is the core of what this book is about. In that silence, you are complete. You need no justification. You are simply you. Carry that silence with you into the next conversation, the next conflict, the next decision. Let it be the ground beneath your words. From that ground, let simple, true words arise. And when the words stop, return to the silence. You are enough. Your life is enough. No explanation required. Thank you for walking this path with me. I wish you peace, clarity, and the profound freedom of the unapologetic life.